Hello, my name is Jovan Butac, and today I am presenting my Demi process improvement project, which is focused on reducing RFI response delays on the construction project that I'm working on. The main problem is that overdue RFIs create unnecessary waiting time, unclear ownership, field uncertainty, and potential schedule risk. And when the project engineers, the project managers, the superintendents, and subcontract field crews, and the design team and owner do not have timely clarification, so work can slow down or may be forced to be resequenced. And this project, sorry, uses the DMIC method to improve the overall RFI process by using standardized tracking, ownership assignment, aging visibility, and potential escalation, um, all for the benefit of long-term control. And the full baseline overdue rate was 40.9%, while the post-pilot overdue rate was 39.6%, and 81.6% for the in-court baseline overdue um, stat, which is the most concerning stat throughout this whole project. And my goal in this presentation is to explain how each of my phase supported the project and how long-term control plan can help sustain the improvement. So moving on to the roadmap, this slide basically shows the roadmap of what we'll be following for the rest of this presentation. But the most motivating question is, how can the project team reduce overdue RFIs without redesigning the entire communication system? And to answer that, I used the DMI process. In the define phase, I clarified the problem, stakeholders, scope, and CTQs. And in the measure phase, I established the baseline data and data collection plan. In the analyze phase, I used process and statistical evidence to identify the highest root cause. And in the improvement phase, I selected and tested the most practical solutions. And in the control phase, I created a system for sustaining the improvement. The point of view for the stakeholder is the most important throughout the project. I cannot emphasize that enough because I'm an intern right now working with other project engineers. And yeah, we need log discipline and follow-up clarity. And the project managers and superintendents also need visibility into agent hot RFIs. That way the subcontractors and the field crews have some sort of direction when continuing with their work. And also the design team and owner need complete RFIs and clear review deadlines. So the main idea of this project is that the improvement is sustained only when ownership, age, status, and corrective action remain visible every week. So moving on to the define phase. In the define phase, the purpose was to convert a broad communication issue into a measurable RFI process improvement project. And the problem, again, was that delayed RFIs created field uncertainty, waiting time, schedule risk, and possible rework exposure. So for this project, the verified defect was an RFI being open for more than 14 calendar days. And the goal was to reduce overdue RFIs by 8% from the baseline RFI log within the 8 weeks of having this class. And the scope included RFIs that were created, tracked, reviewed, followed up on, and closed during the improvement period. And it did not include changing contract requirements, change orders, redesigning documents, or forcing immediate answers for these complex RFIs. And the CPOC summary helped define the process. The suppliers included our field crews and design team. The inputs included the questions, drawing specs, and overall field context. And the process included drafting, routing, reviewing, returning, and closing RFIs. And the outputs included a formal response and the updated RFI log. And our customers were our project managers, our PEs, subcontractors in the field crews, the owners, and the design team. So the defined tollgate confirmed that the problem was CTQ stakeholders, scope, and expected benefits were clearly defined, and the decision was to proceed because the project was measurable, feasible, stakeholder driven, and connected to schedule. So next we can move on to the measure phase. And in the measure phase, the goal was to collect consistent data so that the improvement decisions were based on verified performance instead of assumptions. And The data source was the project RFI report that is produced every week, and the data was collected every Tuesday at noon, and the data was and uh, this fixed snapshot helped reduce variation caused by collecting the report at different times of the week. And the key measures were open RFIs, overdue RFIs, the court status, if the RFI was hot, and the age distribution. And because I only had access to about 6 weeks of the RFIs, I based it off of 6 weeks instead of 8. So across the 6 week baseline period, there were 264 open RFIs and 129 overdue inspections. RFIs, sorry. And this created an overdue rate by 48.9%. The average open backlog was around 44 RFIs. And the chart shows that the overdue rate changed over time, moved from 61.4% to 51.2%, then 62.8%, then down to 43.2%, 37%, and then finally 38.6%. And this showed that the issue was not only the size of the backlog. The project also needed to understand how RFIs are moving through responsibility handoffs. Sorry, and the measure phase tollgate confirmed that the baseline was established during the Tuesday noon census, clear operational definitions, and internally reconciled totals. And for stakeholders, this created one shared version of the truth for the backlog and follow-up decisions. So we can move on to the analyze phase. In the analyze phase, the purpose was to use the process and statistical evidence to identify where the improvement should be focused, and several possible causes were considered, including people, process, documentation, communication, data, and overall complexity of the project. And the strongest root cause area was the in-court return and closure process. The data showed that the RFIs in the project team's court had an overdue rate of 81.6%, while the RFIs outside the project team's court had an overdue rate of 32.8%, which is a major difference. As the statistical test supporting this finding itself. The two proportion test resulted in a z-score of 7.46 and a p of less than 0.001, which means that the significance or the difference was statistically significant. The analysis is not about blaming the project team, but some RFIs may already be overdue when they return to the project team's court. The important part is that the in-court queue was the location where the team had the most direct ability to act, and the analyzed tollgate confirmed that the project should focus on aging, visibility, 10-day warnings to avoid the 14-day overdue warning, and owner accountability and close reassign decisions after return responses. So we then move on to the improve phase. The purpose was to select and test a practical solution that addressed the verified root cause, and the selected solution was standardizing RFI tracking, ownership, aging visibility, and escalation. The improved process included 6 main steps. First being each RFI going through a completeness check. Secondly, the RFI is then entered into an active RFI log, and third, each RFI log has its designated owner due date. And fourth, the RFI is reviewed by age bucket. Fifth, RFIs approaching the 14-day threshold receive a 10-day escalation or a 10-day warning. And sixth, when a response returns, the project team must decide whether to close or reassign the RFI. And the Pew matrix help compare possible solutions based on expected effect, implementation speed, cost, stakeholder acceptance, data visibility, and sustainability. And the selected solution was strong because it was realistic, low cost, and directly connected to the root cause. And the pilot result was very significant with P equaling 0.0011, and the overdue rate improved to 50.5% in the baseline comparison compared to 39.6% after the pilot. For stakeholders, this means that field crews get clearer direction, PMs receive earlier warnings, and reviewers receive more complete RFIs. And the improved tollgate confirmed that the solution was practical, data supported, and effective. So now we can move on to the control phase. In the control phase, the purpose was to keep the improvement from fading after the pilot period. And this is where the project moves from a temporary improvement to a repeatable process. The control system, the controls chart, sorry, used for this RFI project was a P chart because each RFI is attribute data, and for each RFI that's either overdue or not. Um, the P chart monitored the proportion of overdue RFIs um, over a period of time, and the control system follows the Chapter 7 structure. Standard is to keep the overdue rate at or below the target. And the measurement method is the Tuesday noon census. The comparison method uses the baseline, target, and P-chart control limits. And feedback comes from weekly huddles, reason codes, um, reviewer comments, and audit findings. And corrective action includes escalation, close or reassign decisions, and updating ownership or due dates. Um, the control tollgate confirmed that SOPs, the quality manual, P chart, reaction plan, and internal audit plan was documented. For stakeholders, this creates a warning system before overdue RFIs become um, a larger schedule issue. And moving on to slide 8 is our long-term control plan. And this slide addresses the long-term control plan, which is one of the most important parts of this presentation. And the high risk point is not the pilot itself. It is keeping the new habits active after our presentation ends. And the ADCAR model supports the change management plan. And awareness comes from showing baseline risk and explaining how overdue RFIs affect schedule and coordination. And the desire comes from showing each stakeholder how the improved process benefits their work. Knowledge comes from the training the team on the log. Sorry, the knowledge comes from the training the team on the log, checklists, hot flags, and escalation rules. And the ability comes from practicing the process throughout our huddles weekly. And the reinforcement comes from our random audits, short-term wins, and management review. And the sustainment controls include ownership, cadence, audits, and a reaction plan. And PEs own the log and the P chart. The PMs own escalation. Our superintendents help identify and schedule critical work. And the cadence includes a daily in-court review, um, a weekly Tuesday afternoon census, and a weekly RFI huddle. And the audits are bi-weekly during the first 8 weeks and monthly after stabilization. Um, The reaction plan includes a 10-day escalation, reason codes for RFIs over 14 days, and the management review for RFIs over 29 days. And this plan protects stakeholders from returning to informal follow-up habits. Um, so stakeholder impact. This slide summarizes why the project matters to stakeholders, um, and the project value is fewer avoidable delays, clearer accountability, and stronger project coordination. And by the end of the project, the overdue rate decreased from 58.5 to 39.6 after the pilot. And the analysis also showed that the in-court queue had the greatest root cause exposure with an 81.6% overdue rate compared to a 32.8% outside the project team's court. And for PEs, the improvement reduces chasing down the owner, the due date, the age, and the court status is now visible. And for our PMs and superintendents, it gives clearer or earlier visibility into schedule critical risks. And for our subcontractors and their field crews, this reduces the chance of pausing work because clarification is missing. And for the owner and design team, it gives them confidence because RFIs are more complete and the review process is more transparent. So the final tollgate recommendation is to retain um, the controlled RFI log implement an escalation rule, a weekly P chart, and an audit cycle. Um, so for my final recommendation is to keep the improved RFI process as part of standard work. And again, this includes one active RFI log, clear RFI ownership, 14-day overdue definition, an age review bucket, a 10-day warning, um, closing or re-signing the RFI, monitoring P chart, and utilizing audits. And the goal is to not eliminate every RFI delay because some RFIs, again, are very complex and require additional engineering review, owner input, or additional consultation. And the goal is to reduce avoidable waiting time and to make the process visible enough for the team to act before the RFIs become overdue. And the project produced an 18.9 point reduction from the baseline comparison period to the post-line period, and the pilot was statistically significant with a p being 0.011, and the weekly consensus sample also gives the team uh, a consistent method for future monitoring. And my final takeaway is that the RFI, the data shows that the process can improve, but the control plan is what keeps that improvement from fading. Thank you so much.